All right, so now I want to take up the issue of what correlating cause and effect means for a science of psychology. As behaviorists, we're interested in looking at what is observable and only what is observable. Only that counts as scientific data. And then we're trying to correlate cause and effect relationships among those observational data. So here's what we're trying to explain. Here's a human being, and I've got a slightly oversized head here because if we're going to do psychology, then clearly the head is important because lots of stuff happens inside that head. What are we trying to explain here as psychologists, right, so to speak? Well, we know that the human being is part of a broader environment, and we know, roughly speaking, and this is what I'm going to call the standard model, of psychology, using the Greek symbol psi for psychology or psychological here. Well, what we're interested in is seeing how, if we have the environment out here, human beings are all part of an environment. We're surrounded by an environment. And the environment impinges right upon the human being all sorts of stimuli. We have light stimuli, sound stimuli, chemical stimuli that come through our noses, tactile stimuli, heat stimuli, and so forth. And so we say we have all kinds of then stimuli from the environment impinging right upon us. Then what happens is inside our heads we have lots of experiences, psychological experience. We have various kinds of perceptions. Some of those will get stored away in memory. On the basis of those perceptions and memories, we'll have various kinds of thoughts. We'll have various kinds of feelings and so on, all kicking around inside our head here, so to speak. And then after all of that processing goes on, what then happens is the person then acts in the environment. And so we have action, right? Or the term that behaviorists are especially going to like, behavior occurs. And this then is going to be what we can call a response. So it might be the case that out there in the environment, there's a certain stimuli, say my coffee cup sitting on the table over there, it impinges upon me. So I have a certain perception there, that evokes in me a certain feeling, right? I now am thirsty, and so I have a thought, maybe I'll walk over there, get my coffee cup, and have a sip. And so then my behavioral response or my action response will be then to walk over, get my cup of coffee, and have a sip. Now, how do we explain that, right, as scientists? Well, what we want to do is have, among all of those things that we have observed here, a regularized correlation of the cause and effect. So we can say that the reason why he behaved that way is he had certain thoughts, feelings, and perceptions right inside his head, and those were stimulated by certain kinds of environmental conditions. And then predictively, once we've got that worked out, we can do it in a forward direction. We can say, given certain kinds of stimuli, we know that that will lead to certain kinds of thoughts, feelings, perceptions, and so forth, and those thoughts, feelings, and perceptions, and so forth will then cause certain kinds of behaviors. So let's label these things. Suppose we say everything that's going on in the environment in terms of its impinging upon the human being, let's call that A. Right, the stimuli from the environment upon the human being. Everything that goes on inside the human head, in the psyche, right, so to speak, we will call that B. And then everything that flows from what goes on in the human psyche outwardly in terms of action or behavior, we will call that C. Everything in that category here. Well, what we want to then be able to do is take all of the environmental stimuli that are possible for a human organism and correlate them with all of the things that are going on in B. So we know there are certain colors, there are certain shapes, there are certain kinds of objects, there are certain kinds of actions and properties, all those things that are going on in the environment that can be stimuli. Those then will be correlated with certain perceptions, thoughts, and feelings inside of the psyche. So one thing we want to do then is to correlate all of the environmental stimuli, that is to say everything in A, with all of the psychological phenomena B. That's all the stuff going on inside the head. Then we also then want to be able to take all of the psychological phenomena and correlate it with people's actions, correlate it with their behaviors, correlate it rather with all of the responses, right, that they then in turn act upon in the environment. And then that correlation, of course, is two ways. These things will be causing these sorts of things here, or we should be able to, from certain kinds of behaviors, infer backwards what kinds of feelings cause that behavior or what kind of thoughts and so forth. So what we also want to then do is be able to correlate all of the things in B with everything in C. And if we can do all of that, and we've got a full elaboration of everything that's possible here, everything that's possible here, everything that's possible here, and we know all of the correlations that are possible amongst all of them, that then will be a full and complete science of psychology.